to the first video on stem and leaf diagrams. In this video we're going to look at how you construct a stem and leaf diagram when you're given a set of data. And this is a fairly common exam question. So the first thing you'll do when you're given a big list of numbers like this is find the smallest number, which I can see here is a 7, and the largest number, which is 34. In fact, there are two of those numbers. You then need to decide what your stem is going to look like. Now normally your stem will just be made up of the number of tens for each of the numbers in your list. So this 7 right here, that actually has 0 tens and 7 units. This 28 up here, that has 2 tens and 8 units. And our largest number 34, well, that has 3 tens and 4 units, and so on. So our tens need to start down at 0 tens, to include numbers like 7 or the 9, and needs to go all the way up to 3 tens. This will include 34, 33, 31, and so on. So our stem needs to go from 0 all the way up to 3. So this 0 here represents 0 tens, so numbers like 2, 3, 4, and so on. This 1 represents 1 ten, so numbers like 12, 13, 14. This 2 represents 2 tens, so anything in the 20s, and then this one, anything in the 30s. We then draw ourselves a vertical line like this, and then we go through and we mark on every single number in the diagram. And it's a good idea to cross these off as you go to make sure you don't miss any out. Now stem and leaf diagrams are usually referred to as ordered stem and leaf diagrams. This is because the numbers that you put in here must be in order. So I'll start with the smallest number first and cross that off, that's 7. And to put that into the diagram I put a 7 here. This 7 represents 0 tens, because that's the stem that it's on, and 7 units, so that's just the number 7. The next smallest number would be 9, so I put a 9 here, and that 9 represents 0 tens from the stem and 9 units. That's all the numbers that are less than 10, so let's move up to the numbers that are bigger than 10. So we've got 11 here, I think that's the next smallest one, so I'll cross that off and I'll put a 1 here. So that 1 doesn't represent just 1, it represents 11 because it's in the tens row. So we've got 11, I can see we've got two 15s here, so I'll mark those on with a 5 and another 5 because there are two of them. And then we have a 19 as well, so I'll put a 9 in this tens column because that represents 19. That's all of the numbers below 20, so let's move up into the 20s. Well, we've actually got 20 itself, so I'd put a 0 here, because that 2 and 0 represents 20. Then we've got a 22, so I need a 2 for 22. I've got a 3 for 23. I've actually got a 24 as well, so I need a 4 here. I've got two 25s, so I need two 5s. And a 7 for 27. And then finally I've got two 8s to represent the two 28s that I had in the diagram. So we're left with the 30s. Well, the smallest one is 30, so I put a 0 here to represent 30. I've got a 1, a 3, and a 4. So 31, 33, and 34. Now the diagram is almost complete, but there will always be an extra mark in an exam for this kind of question for drawing on a key. Because we haven't made it clear what this 7 actually represents. We know it means the number 7, 0 tens and 7 units, but sometimes it could represent different numbers, as you'll see in a later example. So you have to draw yourself a key. So you would write your key, so it's really clear what your key is, and then pick a number from your list. So I'm going to use the number 15 right here. So a 1 on the stem, and then you draw your vertical line, followed by a 5 in your leaves, represents the number 15. This tells anyone who reads your stem and leaf diagram what the numbers represent. So this will gain you full marks in an exam. Okay, here's a question for you to have a go at. If you press pause and then do so, don't forget the key of course, and then press play and I'll show you what the answer was. Okay, here are the answers to this question then. The smallest number you should have found was 37 up here, and the largest number is in the 60s. We've got 67 right here. So our stem needs to go from the 30s, 40s, 50s, and 60s. The next thing then is to plot these numbers. So we've got 37, that was our smallest. We've got 38, 38, and actually another 38, so we need three 38s. And then finally we have a 39. Moving up into the 40s, we've got a 40. We've got a 41 and another 41, so we need two of those. We have a 43 and a 44. Then moving up to the 50s, well, we've got two 50s, so we need two zeros for both 50s. We have a 54, two 55s, a 58, and then finally into the 60s, 61, 66, 62, 67, 61, 62, 66, and 67. And of course, not forgetting that all-important extra mark, the key. So I'll pick any number in this. Let's go for 41. 4 with a line, then a 1 equals 41. Okay, let's have a look at a second example then of stem and leaf diagrams. Now, this is less common in exams, but it has come up before, so you need to be ready for it. But sometimes they ask you to draw a stem and leaf diagram, but the numbers you're given are decimal numbers. Now, it changes the method only slightly in that the stem no longer represents tens anymore, but it represents the units. And the leaves, rather than being the units, are just the tenths. So we're looking at these numbers, and I can see the smallest number here, we've got a 1.4, and the largest number, well, they go up into the 4s, so 4.4 here looks like the largest number. So the units for this number is a 1, and the units for this number is a 4. So my stem needs to go 1, 2, 3, and 4. But rather than being tens, these now represent units. So you go through the numbers in exactly the same way, but you don't need to put the decimal points in. So for my smallest number 1.4, I'll put a 4 here. So remember, this represents 1 unit, and this represents 0.4. So this is 1.4. I've got a 1.7, so I need to put a 7 here, and a 9, so that's 1.9. So these numbers are 1.4, 1.7, and 1.9, not 14, 17, and 19. And I'll do that by showing the key later on. So let's have in the 2s, well, we've got 2.0, so that goes here. We've got a 2.2, we've got a 2.4, a 2.6, a 2.8, and a 2.9. And then moving up into the 3s, we've got 3.0, 3.2, and 3.1 in order, of course, and 3.5, and then finally 4.1 and 4.4. So all you do to change this and make it clear that these numbers are actually decimal numbers and not numbers in the 10s, 20s, 30s, and 40s is pick a number again. So I'll go for this number here, 4.1. So 4 with a line, then a 1, equals, now it's not 41 this time, it's 4.1. This tells anyone who's looking at this stem and leaf diagram what the numbers actually represent. Okay, here's a question for you to have a try in the same sort of way with decimals. Good luck, press pause, and then when you would like the answer, press play again and I'll show you what it was. Okay, here's the answer then. The first thing you do is look for the smallest and largest numbers. We've got a 5.4 and an 8.6, so our stem needs to go from 5, 6, 7 all the way up to 8. We'll then start putting our numbers on. Well, there's only one number in the 5s, it's 5.4. Move on to the 6s, we've got a 6.0 and we've got a 6.5, we've got a 6.8, I've missed out 6.7, so I'll stick that in here, a 6.9, and that's it for the 6s. On to the 7s, you've got 7.0, 7.1, 7.2, 7.3, and 7.5, finally 7.9, which leaves us with our last set of numbers, 8.1, 8.3, and 8.6, 8.1, 8.3, and 8.6. And of course, to get that final mark, you must draw a key, which is particularly important in this one because it's not clear what these numbers represent. That 5 and a 4 might represent 54. We know that that 5 and 4 actually represents 5.4, so you've got to tell the person reading this diagram that that's the case.